Within each person lies an invisible yet profoundly significant boundary. It's a subtle, almost imperceptible line that separates an individual's true essence from the version of themselves that the world attempts to impose. Surprisingly, most people cross this boundary, often without fully realizing the depth of what is happening. They begin to bend, shrink, and conform to others' expectations, striving for just one thing: to be accepted, to gain approval, or simply to be liked. This process starts with seemingly minor concessions. A person allows themselves to be interrupted in conversation, and instead of asserting their right to speak, they merely laugh, masking an inner discomfort. They agree with what they deeply disagree with, just to avoid confrontation or rocking the boat. They claim everything is fine, even when it's clearly not, fearing they might become a burden or a source of worry for someone else. Over time, this seemingly harmless habit gradually transforms into a way of life permeating every aspect of their existence. And before the individual can grasp the full extent of the situation, they discover they are no longer living for themselves, no longer following their true convictions. Their existence becomes a constant endeavor to ensure comfort for everyone else, leaving their own needs and desires by the wayside. But what happens when this invisible line finally erases itself? And what consequences might this lead to? This troubling tendency, linked to the loss of inner support and self-abnegation, was observed and deeply contemplated by ancient sages long before our era. The great Stoics, whose teachings remain relevant to this day, warned of the dangers of such a lifestyle. Marcus Aurelius, the Roman emperor and philosopher, once uttered a thought that is strikingly insightful and pertinent even now. It never ceases to amaze me. We all love ourselves more than other people, but we care more about their opinion than our own. This paradox highlights a profound contradiction in human nature. On one hand, a person firmly asserts their self-worth, claiming they put themselves above all else. On the other hand, they are astonishingly willing to trade their self-respect, their inner integrity, for fleeting crumbs of external approval. Just consider, how many times has an individual, after finishing a conversation, mentally replayed it over and over, regretting unspoken words, wishing they had said something different? How many times have they felt a sharp sting of disrespect, but instead of defending their dignity, swallowed the offense and suppressed the urge to speak out, not wanting to be that person who disturbs the peace? It is in these moments, in these hidden concessions, that the degradation of personality begins. When a person consciously or unconsciously demeans themselves, when they pretend to be less significant, less strong, or less capable than they truly are, they are, in essence, teaching the world how it should treat them. And the harsh yet undeniable truth is that the world will rarely treat anyone better than they demand for themselves. Understanding this is only the first step on the path to reclaiming one's true self. But what comes next? How can one break this vicious cycle and start living in harmony with oneself? The Stoic path should not be confused with arrogance or haughtiness. It certainly doesn't mean becoming unfeeling or unapproachable. Its essence lies in being deeply rooted in one's own being, in achieving such inner strength that no one can break a person's spirit without their own consent. Being significant in life is not equivalent to achieving fame or wealth. It means structuring your life in such a way that first and foremost, you are significant to yourself. This implies possessing an unbreakable internal code, principles of which will never be violated, neither for passionate desire, nor for material gain, nor for belonging to any group. And here is the brutal yet honest truth. The very moment a person begins to demean themselves for the approval or benefit of others, they inexorably lose self-respect. And when self-respect drains away, they unwittingly give others carte blanche to treat them in a similar manner. The ancient Stoics perfectly understood this as a matter of the highest virtue. The sage Epictetus instructed that one should under no circumstances exchange their integrity for something that lacks true value. If something demands one's self-respect as payment, its price is too high, regardless of what tempting promises it offers in return. Moving forward, we will explore 5 Stoic lessons designed to help a person never demean themselves again. These are not empty, vague motivational slogans. These are practical, profoundly clear, and deeply human truths that anyone can apply in their daily life. The reader will learn how to stand firm without resorting to aggression, how to value their own inner voice without needing constant external approval, and how to become a person who commands quiet yet undeniable respect. The true beauty of Stoic philosophy lies not merely in pointing out what should be done. It reveals why that action is of paramount importance. For by grasping this ancient wisdom, one realizes it's not about fleeting victories in social interactions. It's about reliably safeguarding the most important relationship any of us can have: the relationship with ourselves. Let the reader imagine for a moment that version of themselves who never needs to justify their own significance, the one who doesn't back down when challenged, the one who can remain silent at the appropriate moment, speak when necessary, and walk away if respect no longer matters. This version of a person is not just a fantasy. It is a skill that can be developed, but only if the individual stops demeaning themselves and begins to live according to a code that no one else can rewrite. The reader will be offered 5 specific teachings, drawn from Stoicism, capable of strengthening their inner power, sense of self-worth, and awareness of inner significance. These lessons are not intended to impress others. Their essence lies in commanding respect without ever betraying one's true self. And it is important to remember, the respect a person shows for themselves determines the price the world must acknowledge for interacting with them. Before proceeding with the explanation, the author urges the reader to make a commitment, not to him, but to themselves. This commitment is to, from this day forward, no longer demean themselves for those people who would never show such growth for them. If the reader is ready, they should stay until the very end. No component should be skipped, as each teaching is a logical continuation of the previous one. Stop explaining yourself to everyone. One of the quickest ways individuals demean their own worth, often without realizing it, is by excessively justifying their actions, decisions, and even their deepest dreams. This behavior might be perceived as a sign of politeness or a desire to be understood. However, the truth is that when a person constantly offers explanations, they surrender their inner power. The Stoic philosopher Epictetus instructed, "If someone wishes to be a writer, let them write." He did not say, "If you want to be a writer, explain to everyone why you write so they approve of you." The Stoics deeply understood that a person's actions should speak louder than any words. The more an individual tends to justify themselves, the wider the field for others to find flaws in their reasoning, question their motives, and sow seeds of doubt in their mind. Excessive explanation of one's actions often stems from deeply ingrained insecurity. It arises from a subtle yet pervasive belief that one's personal decisions lack true power until they are validated by external approval. Such behavior is a form of self-abasement, where a person seeks external permission simply to be who they are. However, by doing so, the individual voluntarily gives away their inner authority. They implicitly tell the world, "I don't fully trust my own judgment until you confirm it." Here lies the uncomfortable truth. Not everyone will agree with a person's decisions, and not everyone will understand them. And that is perfectly normal. A person does not have to explain their life in minute detail for others to comprehend it. If someone dislikes another's actions, that is their own emotional work to process, not the person's obligation to fix the situation. Consider how much time and vital energy are spent trying to justify your own path to people who aren't even walking it with you. You explain why you quit your job, why you ended a relationship, why you're changing your lifestyle, why you're pursuing a new goal. And yet, in half the cases, those to whom these explanations are addressed won't even be around if you stumble or fall. Stoic philosophy teaches that inner peace and harmony come from focusing on what is within an individual's personal control, and the opinions of other people are clearly not in this sphere. Every moment a person spends trying to make someone understand them is a moment taken away from truly living in accordance with their own truth. When a person stops over-explaining, they make a powerful statement. "I trust myself enough to move forward without your approval." This is a powerful form of self-respect, and it does not require arrogance, but merely a deep clarity of one's own path. There is no need to be rude or intentionally push others away. However, a person should realize that their existence is not a courtroom where every decision made requires unwavering defense before an imaginary jury. Observing those who possess quiet and unwavering confidence, one can notice their demeanor. They do not burden others with excessive arguments explaining their actions. Instead, they simply proceed with action. And it is precisely their ability to act without lengthy explanations that naturally leads others to take them more seriously. The key aspect here is understanding that excessive explanations are not merely verbose. They actually undermine one's position and authority. Imagine a situation where a person is in a business meeting and presents a new concept. If they immediately accompany their idea with many justifications or caveats, it eloquently signals their own insecurity. However, if the idea is stated directly and left without unnecessary comments, it radiates true confidence. It is here that Stoic philosophy offers a significant simplification of life's path. One should be aware of their true values and make choices based precisely on them. Let their actions speak louder than any verbal explanations. Being deeply rooted in what is truly meaningful to them, a person ceases to feel the need to defend every decision. Others, of course, may continue to pass judgment, but their opinion will simply bounce off a more mature and stronger version of themselves. Whenever there is an irresistible urge to give explanations to someone who absolutely doesn't need them, one should pause. It is necessary to ask oneself, is this person's understanding an absolutely necessary condition for further progress? If the answer is no, then silence will possess far greater power than any possible explanations. As Seneca once wisely remarked, associate with people who are likely to improve you. Notably, he did not state, associate with people who always understand you. Not everyone will be able to understand a person, and there is no need for that. It is far more important that a person understands themselves. One who constantly feels the need for explanations has effectively delegated their sense of self-worth to the external environment, leaving it to others. A person who simply acts with deep conviction already possesses significance. And this is not because others assert it, but because such a person has stopped orienting themselves towards external approval. If one aims to never demean themselves again, this is where to start. It is necessary to significantly reduce the number of explanations. One should speak only when truly required. It is important to firmly adhere to one's decisions without feeling the need for an audience to encourage and approve. Their life will instantly become much easier, and their presence significantly stronger. Remember, truly significant people do not declare their importance. They simply live in such a way that their significance becomes an undeniable truth. Among the life principles a person acquires, a crucial understanding emerges. There is no longer a need to explain one's own worth. Building on this thought, a key rule is formed. One should never fight for anyone's attention. One of the most destructive ways a person demeans their own dignity is by striving to win the favor of those who do not recognize their worth. This pattern of behavior can manifest in friendships, romantic relationships, or even in professional settings. People often find themselves exerting excessive effort not to achieve their own goals and ambitions, but merely to be noticed, to be preferred, or to feel important to another person. The bitter truth is that when a person seeks someone's attention, they silently communicate that others' approval is more valuable than their own dignity. And once such a precedent is set, others begin to believe this assertion. The Stoics, known for their deep understanding of human nature, had a very insightful view on this matter. Marcus Aurelius, the great Stoic philosopher, wrote, "The soul takes on the color of its thoughts." If a person's thoughts constantly revolve around how to make others notice them or how to prove their worth to them, then their actions will inevitably betray desperation. And desperation, in turn, is the quickest way to be perceived as less significant. The fact is that genuine respect and deep connection cannot be forced. If someone truly sees a person's worth, they will act accordingly, without forcing them to exert undue effort or jump through hoops. If others do not, then no amount of effort will be sufficient, because they do not value the person through the lens of their true significance. When a person chases attention, they effectively put themselves up for a mental auction, where their own value becomes an object of bidding. In doing so, they hand over to someone else the right to determine their success or failure in this unspoken competition. This position is extremely dangerous. The Stoics would undoubtedly point out that in such a situation, the individual allows what is outside their control to dictate their inner peace. And here is the cunning aspect of the situation. Sometimes, a person might indeed gain attention, albeit for a brief moment. Others might suddenly respond, show interest, or express praise. However, this is only temporary, because the foundation is not genuine respect, but merely the continuous efforts of the one seeking attention. The moment a person stops trying, the connection inevitably fades, and they resort to the chase once more. This vicious cycle is extremely exhausting. Moreover, it teaches a person to evaluate themselves by the amount of attention received, rather than by the true value they represent as an individual. Stoic philosophy offers a radical approach to the issue of attention and recognition. To completely withdraw from any form of competition for them. In other words, One should not even attempt to participate in such a race. When an individual feels the need to fight for someone's time or approval, it serves as an unequivocal indicator that their true worth is underestimated. If one considers examples of the most revered individuals, it becomes evident that they do not spend time pondering how to attract the attention of others. Instead, their energy is directed towards realizing their own mission, adhering to their principles, and continuous personal development. As a result of this approach, people naturally show interest in them and are drawn to them. Attention, therefore, becomes not an end in itself, but merely a natural consequence of living a deep and meaningful life. Instead of asking how to attract others' attention, it is more expedient to shift to a more fundamental question. Is it even worth seeking the attention of those who cannot appreciate a person without their persistent efforts? With such a change in perspective, the answer becomes self-evident and perfectly clear. As the ancient Greek philosopher Epictetus taught, if you want to improve, be content to be thought foolish and stupid. In other words, it is important to be prepared to allow others to mistakenly interpret one's true value, while it is quietly and steadily being built. Those who are truly discerning will inevitably notice this value without requiring any additional efforts from the person to demonstrate or advertise it. Such a stance by no means implies becoming indifferent or detached. It means ceasing active performances or actions aimed solely at attracting the interest of others. A person is still capable of interaction and showing care, but they stop conditioning their self-esteem on the presence or absence of external attention. It is important to realize people intuitively sense when someone is trying to win them over. Even if these attempts are masked as humor, offering favors, or excessive involvement, the deep-seated energy of such a striving is still felt. And this non-verbal energy can convey much more than any spoken words. When an individual stops this struggle for attention, something truly amazing happens. They stop squandering their inner strength. A transformation occurs from begging, "Please notice me," to a firm confidence. I know who I am, and I'm not going to diminish myself to be seen by you. In time, people whose opinions truly matter will inevitably notice a person, even if they make no effort to achieve it. It's remarkable that those who were previously indifferent suddenly begin to wonder why this person has stopped seeking their favor. It is in such moments that it becomes clear that superficial attention holds little value. What is truly needed is deep respect. And that, as we know, only comes when a person refuses to beg for it. If one strives to live the life of a significant person, they should grasp a simple truth. Their own importance is not bestowed by the approving glances of others. It is affirmed first and foremost in one's own consciousness. Therefore, one should stop participating in a race they never signed up for. It is enough to stand still. Let others pass by if they wish. Everyone has their own finish line. 3. Learn to walk away without announcing it. Most people mistakenly believe that true strength is manifested in struggle, in striving to prove oneself right, or in winning arguments. However, in reality, one of the purest forms of strength lies in the ability to simply walk away, and to do so without any announcements, without prior warnings, without trying to make the other person understand the reasons for such a departure. When a person demeans themselves, they often do so by staying too long in places that do not deserve them. They stay because they harbor hope for change. They stay because they wish their true worth would finally be recognized. They stay because they don't want to look like they gave up. But here's the truth. Staying in situations that drain your energy is not loyalty. It is self-betrayal. The wise Stoics perfectly understood that sometimes the bravest and most decisive action is knowing how to let go. Seneca once wrote, "Associate with those who will make you a better person. Welcome those whom you yourself can improve. The process is mutual, for people learn while they teach." Special attention should be paid to what he emphasizes. If a connection does not contribute to a person's improvement, if it does not elevate their life or character, then there is no point in maintaining it. Walking away in this context does not mean showing coldness or indifference. It is a conscious protection of one's mind, one's dignity, and one's future. This is precisely why it is crucial to withdraw without prior notice. When a person warns others of their intention to leave a situation, stating, "I will leave if this doesn't change," they unwittingly provide others with an opportunity for manipulative influence in the current moment. In response, they might offer only temporary promises, change their behavior for a short period, or utter precisely the words the departing person yearns to hear just to keep them around. However, as experience shows, everything inevitably reverts to the previous detrimental pattern of interaction afterwards. A silent departure, on the other hand, means the individual has already made a final decision, realizing that they have given enough of themselves and their energy. They no longer require the other person's understanding, consent, or approval. They have realized that their inner energy is too valuable to spend on tedious explanations for choosing peace over constant chaos. Consider the profound wisdom and dignity inherent in silence. In such a departure, there are no humiliating pleas, no excessive drama, no final, emotional speech designed to make them suddenly see the light. There is only pure, decisive action. The person simply leaves. They continue on their path forward. They reclaim their personal space and boundaries. People who genuinely care for them will inevitably notice their absence and reach out with sincere intent. Those for whom they were indifferent will not. This is how it becomes clear who truly belongs in a person's life. Stoic philosophy teaches us that we should not be controlled by what is outside our power. An individual cannot control whether someone respects them, treats them well, or values their presence. But they have complete control over whether they remain in that environment. And when they make the decision to leave, they convincingly prove to themselves that they take their own worth seriously. Walking away without warning also initiates profound internal changes within the person themselves. It teaches them to rely exclusively on their own standards and principles rather than on external reactions or anyone else's approval. This strengthens the muscle of self-respect and self-worth. Such an act clearly demonstrates that one does not need anyone's permission to leave what is harmful. And it also sends a powerful message, not only to them, but also to oneself, that a person will not tolerate being treated as anything less than they are. Of course, this does not mean one should impulsively sever ties with people over minor mistakes or isolated transgressions. On the contrary, it implies the ability to recognize consistent patterns of behavior. If someone repeatedly demonstrates their disregard or lack of proper appreciation, one should believe them. And when a person believes them, they act, without waiting for them to miraculously transform into someone they are not. This approach applies not only to interpersonal relationships. It is equally effective in professional settings, within various social groups, and in any other environment that systematically devalues or demeans a person. There is no need for dramatic social media announcements or lengthy explanations of one's motives. It is enough to simply leave such a space and move to where one is met with due respect and genuine appreciation. The elegance of this principle lies in creating an unnoticed, yet significant impact. Others gradually begin to notice that the person does not cling to these connections, does not force their way into certain circles, and does not beg for acceptance. And paradoxically, it is precisely this that earns them greater respect. As Marcus Aurelius aptly noted, the best revenge is to be unlike him who performed the injury. In other words, there is no need to engage in conflict, argue, or descend to the level of another's disrespect. A person simply rises above the situation, moving beyond their influence. Therefore, it is important to remember, every time someone decides to walk away from what does not meet their standards, they are not losing. On the contrary, they are protecting the most valuable thing they possess: themselves. True strength sometimes lies in silence. Their silence becomes their strength. The fourth principle states, you must guard your time as if it were precious gold. Self-abasement is not always manifested in words or in the nature of interpersonal connections. Sometimes, it is expressed in allowing one's time to be consumed. When someone thoughtlessly squanders their hours, they implicitly communicate to the world that their own life does not possess sufficient value to be protected. The ancient Stoics deeply understood that time is the very quintessence of being. Seneca, the great philosopher, wrote, "It is not that we have a short time to live, but that we waste a lot of it." Every minute a person spends is a part of their life that will be irrevocably lost. Nevertheless, how often do people dedicate it to individuals and activities that drain their energy? How often do they undertake obligations driven by guilt, ingrained habit, or the fear of letting others down, only to deeply regret it later? When a person begins to treat their time as an infinite resource, they unwittingly encourage others to perceive their availability in the same way. As a result, such people may unceremoniously call at any time, ask for tasks that they could easily solve themselves, and expect constant readiness for cooperation on their terms. If an individual consistently agrees to all requests, the true value of their presence gradually diminishes, as it becomes excessively available and, consequently, taken for granted. Protecting one's time by no means implies selfishness or intentional unavailability. Rather, it is a profound realization of the fact that every yes uttered in response to one request inevitably entails a no to something else. And if these decisions are not made consciously and purposefully, a person risks denying themselves the development of their own potential, the achievement of inner peace, and the realization of their cherished dreams. The teaching of the Stoics urges us to focus on those aspects of being that are under our direct control. And time, undoubtedly, is one of the few such elements entirely within a person's power. It is they who decide where to direct this invaluable substance, to whom to dedicate it, and what to create with its help. When time is used wisely and judiciously, it serves as a direct reflection of an individual's self-respect. Imagine the situation. If someone handed you 86 on 400 with the condition that the entire sum must be spent in one day, you would, without a doubt, approach every decision about spending these funds with extreme caution. You would not give them away to strangers or spend them on things that hold no meaning for you. Nevertheless, every day, each person is allotted 86 in 400 seconds. And, unfortunately, most people spend these moments as if they possess absolutely no value. When an individual does not show due respect for their time, they ultimately face a feeling of deep regret. Looking back, many realize that they gave hours, days, and even years of their lives to activities and relationships that brought them no benefit and did not serve their true purposes. The Stoics would likely call such behavior a kind of moral failure, not because the person lived an incorrect life in the conventional sense, but because their existence unfolded without a conscious regard for the most precious of resources. Protecting one's time requires establishing clear and unbreakable boundaries. One must be ready to say no without feeling the need to justify oneself or give lengthy explanations. Furthermore, it is extremely important to schedule time for oneself and treat these personal periods with the same seriousness as an important business meeting, for one's own well-being and development are undoubtedly of paramount importance. This also implies eliminating factors that consume precious time from a person's life. This refers not only to interactions with certain people, but also to the formation of detrimental habits. Endless scrolling through news feeds, participating in meaningless discussions, taking on excessive commitments for matters in which there is no genuine interest. All these are hidden forms of self-demeaning, often unrecognized. One might mistakenly believe that it's just 20 minutes here or an hour there. But these seemingly insignificant stretches of time inexorably accumulate. The result of such accumulation is a life in which a person has given their best resources and energy to things that lack true significance. When an individual actively guards their time, they begin to notice the emergence of a powerful inner strength. Others also begin to show them due respect. Realizing that a person is not prone to squandering their own time, their tendency to squander their own time significantly decreases. Marcus Aurelius, the great Roman emperor and philosopher, reminded himself, "Do not act as if you were going to live 10,000 years. Death hangs over you. While you live, while it is in your power, be good." In the context of this thought, the phrase "be good" acquires special meaning. It calls for the wise and productive use of allotted time. Time should be invested in what contributes to personal growth, brings inner peace, and fully aligns with a person's deepest values. It is unacceptable to demean oneself by remaining constantly available for an endless stream of distractions that lead one away from building the life they truly aspire to. Before taking on another obligation, one must ask themselves, if this were my last week of life, would I still give my time to this? If the answer is negative, then before saying an affirmative yes, one should think deeply. The more consciously and purposefully a person manages their time, the more fulfilling and significant their life will be perceived, and the less they will put up with anything that drains this precious life energy from them. Therefore, it is extremely important to guard your time like priceless gold, for it is the only currency of existence that cannot be replenished or re-earned. For every person, time is a priceless resource that should be spent with maximum intentionality. In this context, one of the key principles often overlooked is the idea expressed in the fifth point: speak less, but mean much more. Often, without even noticing it, a person demeans themselves by engaging in excessive verbal activity. This is especially evident in situations where words are spoken merely to fill an awkward silence, to demonstrate perceived intelligence, or to gain someone's favor. While words inherently possess immense power, their constant and indiscriminate outpouring inevitably strips them of their former significance and weight. Stoic philosophers, known for their pursuit of virtue and self-control, greatly valued verbal restraint. Zeno of Citium, revered as the founder of Stoicism, asserted that speech should be a tool for expressing truth and achieving meaningful goals rather than serving ego or momentary impulses. Echoing him, the wise Epictetus taught, pointing to a physiological human trait: we have 2 ears and 1 mouth, so that we can listen twice as much as we speak. The more a person speaks, the wider they open the door for potential misunderstandings, misinterpretations of their words, or hasty judgments from others. However, what is far more significant, incessant and aimless chatter increases the risk of devaluing one's own voice and opinion in the eyes of others. Recall those individuals whom you hold in the deepest respect. Often, they are not the ones who strive to take center stage in every conversation, dominating it. On the contrary, they are people who listen attentively, observe closely, and then, after careful consideration, utter their words with striking precision and relevance. When they finally say something, others instinctively listen, because they realize that these people are not accustomed to squandering their words idly. The less a person speaks, the more naturally their words gain greater weight and authority. Others begin to notice that every word they utter truly deserves attention and contemplation. This approach forms a unique, unobtrusive form of significance, not through artificial secrecy or attempts at manipulation, but solely through mindfulness and purposefulness in every utterance. Reducing the volume of speech also provides valuable time for deep reflection and contemplation. Many people inadvertently undermine their own self-respect and that of others by speaking in a burst of strong emotions, thoughtlessly making promises that later prove to be unfulfillable, or revealing information they later sincerely regret. Stoic philosophers advocated the principle of a conscious pause between an external stimulus and an internal reaction, insisting on the need to provide the mind with enough space to carefully filter out everything superfluous and unnecessary before making a decision, taking an action, or uttering a word. It is in this that a deep connection lies with the principle that a person should never again demean themselves. When a person speaks without a clear purpose or intention, they often subconsciously strive to prove something, to fill a void, thereby trying to avoid being ignored or unnoticed by others. However, such behavior stems from deeply ingrained fears: the fear of being ignored, the fear of being misunderstood, the fear of being forgotten. In reality, human memory tends to retain silence much more firmly than incessant chatter. People tend to remember the one who can maintain composure amidst general confusion, who does not feel the constant need to defend themselves at every turn, who does not expend vital energy on endless justifications or idle gossip. Such behavior does not mean that a person becomes cold or detached. On the contrary, it allows their silence to work for them. When someone sheds the obsessive need to constantly express their thoughts verbally, they thereby allow their actions, their presence, and their unwavering consistency to speak for them. The ability to speak less also represents an act of discipline, and discipline, in turn, is a manifestation of self-respect. It implicitly tells the world, there's no need to reveal your whole essence to prove your worth. It will be revealed in what you choose to share. Another undeniable advantage of this approach is gaining control over one's own narrative. The less information a person provides, the fewer opportunities others have to manipulate the story about them. The individual determines what, when, and with whom to share. Such self-control naturally commands deep respect. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "If it is not right, do not do it. If it is not true, do not say it." This is a simple but powerful filter, Act only when it is right. Speak only when it is true. One can only imagine how much more powerful, purer, and influential communication would become if every word spoken passed through this strict filter. In practical terms, there are specific steps to apply this principle. When a person feels an irresistible urge to speak, they should pause for a moment. They should ask themselves, is this truly necessary? Will it bring value? It is important to actively listen to others, not just to prepare a response, but to genuinely understand the interlocutor. Empty chatter should be replaced with purposeful and meaningful presence. Let a person's quiet confidence fill the space instead of noise. It is important to remember that silence can be both an answer, a boundary, and a powerful statement. When someone masters the art of speaking less, but imbuing their words with more meaning, they stop chasing influence. Instead, they begin to attract it. People will listen carefully to what they say, and when they finally speak, their words will carry the weight of a person who perfectly knows their true worth. Thus, instead of filling a room with noise in an attempt to feel significant, one should step into the power of intentional silence. Let people feel the power of their presence before they hear the sound of their voice. A person's silence often possesses astonishing power, and their words, when finally spoken, carry significant weight. The process of self-demeaning rarely manifests as a sudden, obvious event. On the contrary, it represents a slow but steady erosion of one's own dignity. It begins with minor compromises, a barely noticeable silence in situations where one should have spoken up, or with excessive efforts made for those who would not reciprocate in the slightest. Gradually, these small concessions and sacrifices accumulate, and at some point, a person finds themselves in front of a mirror, feeling deep bewilderment at their own invisibility and loss of significance. Followers of Stoic philosophy constantly remind us that a person's true significance is not derived from external attributes, such as high titles, public applause, or the desire to be the most noticeable and vocal in any environment. True worth stems from a life founded on unwavering principles that a person categorically refuses to betray. It originates from the ability to carry oneself with an unruffled, quiet confidence that one's inner worth is unshakable and not subject to any discussion or negotiation. Each life lesson serves as a reminder of a fundamental truth. Respect for a person begins with themselves. If a person wants others to treat them as a significant figure, they must first make an internal decision about their own importance, and then build their life in such a way as to prove it, never resorting to begging for recognition. Marcus Aurelius, the great Roman emperor and philosopher, once stated, "You have power over your mind, not outside events." Understanding this profound wisdom allows one to gain true strength. This is the entire point. An individual cannot completely control how others perceive them, but they are fully in control of their own self-perception. And once a person makes a firm decision to never demean themselves again, the world around them inevitably begins to adjust to this new reality. It is important to remember that a person's true worth is not something that can be given or taken away by anyone else. It belongs exclusively to them, and their task is to carefully guard it, embody it in every day of their life, and deeply cherish it as an unshakable possession.